What happened to Kamino after the Empire decommissioned the clones? Greetings, students of the Force, and welcome back to the archives. We got to see the full process of the Empire switch from the clones to natural recruits in the Bad Batch. In that series, the decision for the switch was more of a practical one, focusing largely on the instability of the modern clones and citing budget restraints as the primary reason for their decommissioning. The last time we really hear about Kamino so far in canon is when the Empire destroyed Tapoka City and all other facilities like it, basically annihilating the civilization of the Kaminoans. But we became interested in the legacy of this world, and what happened to the once pivotal world of Kamino in the deep future. For that, we would need to dive deep into legends, and in today's holocron reading, we are going to track everything that happened to Kamino, beginning from the moment the Empire decommissioned the clones of Jango Fett to the end of its story. Like most things happen quite differently in Legends, which gives us a fascinating post-Clone Wars timeline of that continuity. Now, let us begin. We wanted to quickly review exactly why Palpatine got rid of the clones, as this is integral to our story. We did a holocron a long time ago detailing this event in full, but it's important for this video to give a brief recap. Once the Galactic Empire took over, they enforced control over Kamino and put it under armed security. Heretofore, Kamino technically hadn't really been a part of the Republic, just under its protection and jurisdiction. This was due to the politics of the ongoing war and the Republic needing the clones. There were talks of Kamino eventually joining the democracy, but they didn't yet have representation in the Senate, making them still technically an independent system. When the new regime began though, the Empire forcefully took control of Kamino, contracting the Kaminoans to exclusively breed clones for the Imperial Stormtrooper Corps. But they would not be the clones of Jango. Palpatine had decided that those clones had become too much of a liability, in large part because Jango's DNA had been spread very thin. The clones being produced at the time were very unpredictable and varied drastically in quality, so Palpatine had them select several new subjects in order to fill out the Stormtrooper ranks, with a myriad of different clone templates, though the original Jango Fett clones weren't exactly happy about this, stating that they never got used to the new guys. However, eventually a handful of Kaminoan scientists were resentful of the Empire after they took control, so they bred a clone sect for a rebellion. A clone uprising then occurred where the last clones of Jango Fett fought against the Stormtrooper occupation and retook Tapoka City from the Empire. In retaliation, the Empire would enlist the services of one Boba Fett, one who knew the Kaminoan facility well enough to get in secretly, as the bounty hunter led a strike force of Stormtroopers to crush the uprising. Boba was extremely well paid for this, and within the matter of one evening, the clones were killed, their clone process destroyed, and the Kaminoans either massacred or arrested. It was after this event that Sidious decided that the cloning process altogether was now impractical. He decommissioned all clones, but still kept the Kaminoans under armed watch, ensuring that they didn't breed any army for someone else in order to raise up arms against the Empire. Palpatine knew the Kaminoans were dangerous. He personally had proved that. Here, it was officially decreed that fresh recruits put through a brainwashing process would work far better for Palpatine's new regime than the old clones. 10 years on, Commander Cody would later refer to all of them as incompetent idiots who were utterly expendable compared to the might of a clone trooper and their battle prowess. And now, we face a large gap in the timeline. The next time we hear from Kamino is exactly 1 year after the Battle of Yavin. Darth Vader would become obsessed with cloning his latest apprentice, Galen Marek, knowing no better place but Kamino to take upon him this undertaking. It took several tries to get right, since cloning Force sensitives was incredibly difficult, almost impossible. But due to new scientific breakthroughs thanks to the Kaminoans, they were inching closer and closer to perfecting the cloning of Galen Marek. With that said, they created something atrocious. Most of the clones came out unstable and deformed. A unique one, Subject 1138, would be the first nearly perfect clone of Galen. We say nearly perfect because this clone was haunted by the memories and emotions of his original self. Vader still trained him, hoping that the clone could overcome this weakness. However, he would end up taking the name Starkiller yet again, before breaking himself out of Kamino. The clone proved here that he had a raw potential in the Force that was astounding. Even adopting his reverse grip Jar-Kai style, Starkiller absolutely eviscerated the Imperial security on Kamino, as he had been much stronger than even the previous Starkiller had been. Once Subject 1138 successfully escaped Kamino to follow his broken memories, Darth Vader enlisted the help yet again of Boba Fett to recapture the clone. He had done all of this in secret from the Emperor, and Vader could not risk Starkiller being discovered out amongst the galaxy. In the meantime though, Vader worked on growing an absolutely perfect clone, and he would eventually achieve this goal, naming this new clone the Dark Apprentice. The Dark Apprentice was disgusted by Starkiller's past, his weakness, and he did everything he could to distance himself from the emotions of a previous, lesser life. Soon, the Dark Apprentice felt absolutely nothing about killing a hologram of his former self's lover, Juno Eclipse. He was proud to have risen above the shortcomings of his template. Vader had trained him extremely well. He was the most powerful clone of Galen Marek that had ever been produced, and he too eclipsed the power of the original. Unfortunately though, the Dark Apprentice would never actually see action, as Boba Fett managed to capture Juno Eclipse and used her as a hostage to lure Subject 1138 back to Kamino. But with him also came the entirety of the Rebel fleet, entering a massive battle with the Imperial blockade over Kamino. Down on the surface, the Dark Apprentice was meant to wait, to be a trap for Subject 1138. Although a wrench was thrown in this plan as Vader was defeated by Starkiller before he could spring the trap, the clone wanted desperately to kill Vader, but he stopped himself after seeing a vision of his eventual death and the revelation of a Dark Apprentice should he go down the dark path. Instead, Clone 1138 took the Dark Lord as prisoner. Meanwhile, the rebels achieved a decisive victory in their battle over Kamino, sending the Empire running for one of the first times since Yavin. Many would go on to record this as cementing the Rebel Alliance as a legitimate threat to the regime of the Empire. In the process, the rebels would also destroy Tamara City, the facility where Clone 1138 and the Dark Apprentice were all cloned, ensuring that no clone of Galen Marek could ever be produced ever again. It's actually unknown in the lore what happened to the Dark Apprentice, but given his power, it's highly unlikely he died during this event. Unfortunately, the rebels had to abandon Kamino following this victory, as even though they won the battle, they did not have the resources or manpower to hold the system permanently. This proved to be extremely lucky for the Empire, as had the rebel had the finances, they could have cloned another army to fight against the Empire. A compelling what if indeed. Although this remained a plan in the background, the rebels would never need it, as the Empire would come to an end over the Battle of Endor. When the Empire failed, the economy of Kamino would utterly collapse. Even though very few of the cloning projects were in circulation, just about every single one of them had ceased, causing a socio-economic regression on the world. In order to survive, the Kaminoans went back to their pre-Clone Wars roots, contracting their services out to local warlords and crime organizations. These were much smaller contracts, but at the very least they were paid, and the Kaminoans were stay afloat a while longer. And finally, the very last time we ever hear about Kamino in Legends is in the year 40 ABY, right after the Vong War and the Second Great Galactic Civil War. Boba Fett returns to his birthplace one final time due to a health condition. Boba was very ill and believed that he could be dying. Boba knew that due to his physiology, only a clone doctor would be able to cure him, and when he got there, it was revealed that he was indeed dying due to a clone degradation. Even though Boba Fett had no artificial growth hormones making him age at a rapid rate, Boba still lived much longer than any clone was expected to. At the age of 71, Boba Fett should have had 30 more good years left, but likely only had a couple due to this condition. It was a simple side effect of being a clone. The only person that would have been able to fully recover from this was a Kaminoan named Ko Sai. Unfortunately though, they had gone missing after the first Battle of Kamino, and eventually, Boba would learn that she had died. The next person that he would find was Taun We, the Kaminoan that knew Boba since his very creation. Although she was missing too due to a recent defection, Boba had no qualms that he of all people could easily locate the Kaminoan. So Boba put Kamino in his rearview mirror and set off to find Taun We. And that, my friends, is the very last time we hear or see anything of Kamino in Legends continuity. In the end, the Kaminoans managed to stick to their roots as survivors and overcome the devastation that the Empire wrought upon their world. Though they existed as a shadow of their former selves, the cloners were preserved, So in Legends, this is everything that happened to Kamino after the Empire, and after the clones were decommissioned. So tell us, had you wondered if there was anything after the Clone Wars with this planet and the stories that it can tell us? What are your thoughts on the ending of the great world of Kamino and how influential they were for a time? As always, my friends, thank you so much for joining us in the archives today, and may the Force be with you.